Marvelous hello, friends and loved ones! So, look, full disclosure, I wanted to have the next entry of my indie games inspired by Megami Tensei series ready to go this month, but Demon School got delayed again, leaving me without a big October video. So I decided to do what I did last year and just play through a Pokemon game and have some fun. It makes sense, I've got Pokemon on the brain thanks to the recently released Legends Z-A, but which one should I play? Last year I did a Gen 1 game with my Pokemon Red version Red Pokemon Challenge, and I did a Gen 2 game with Perfect Crystal a while back, so hey, let's do a Gen 3 game and I'll play Ruby. And since it's Halloween, I think I'll do a bugs only run. Why? Because it's Halloween, and bugs are creepy and have a connection to chocolate that we all try really hard not to think about. Now, I'm not a hardcore Nuzlocker, but I do try to give myself some limitations to make these videos more interesting. For this run, I'll be adhering to the if a Pokemon faints, it dies thing, and I'll also limit the level cap to the next gym leader's ace Pokemon while avoiding items in battle. So the game opens with Professor actually literally just me, and I start out as Jay, who has just moved to Little Root Town. I meet my neighbor and rival, Drendon. The B is silent and the J is invisible, and as I head out of town, I help the professor by choosing one of 3 Pokemon. I go ahead and start with Mudkip, who I name 3 Musketeer because I want nothing to do with it and will be immediately trading it out as soon as possible. So after getting my Pokeballs, I catch the Wurmple siblings, Kit and Cat, who by the grace of Arceus actually evolve into the ones I want them to, and quickly become a Dustox and Beautifly respectively. I also make sure that I catch a Surskit and name it Clark, because it's frustratingly hard to find, but definitely worth the effort. For the record, this one Pokemon is why I'm playing Ruby and not Emerald. Not too much else really happens as we go through the early areas, but we do make one more addition to our team before tackling the Rustboro Gym in Reese's the Nincada, because, you know, he's full of that very specific gritty textured ground-type peanut butter. While Kat ends up wiping the floor with the gym trainers, I'm not sure if her Absorb will take down Roxanne's Geodude, which would leave her open to a 4x rock weakness. So I start the battle off with Clark in the hopes that by reaching the level cap he can survive a single attack, which thankfully he can. This leads us into Roxanne's Nose Pass, so I decide to take advantage of Reese's neutral typing to lower its accuracy as much as possible, then swap to Kit to try and poison it, before swapping back to Reese's, boosting my defense, and then slowly chipping away at it. I'll admit it's definitely not the most exciting first gym battle, but rocks are a huge threat for my bugs, so I wanted to just kind of play it safe and get away from the fight totally deathless, which thankfully I do. The second gym ends up being a lot less of an issue. Thanks to Kit's Confusion and Cat's Gust, Brawley's fighting types go down without any trouble at all. Man, I sure do hope all the gyms go this smoothly. Although, the fight takes longer than I was expecting because his Makuhita kept using Sand Attack. Really, Brawley? Lowering accuracy? Kinda loser goes for that strategy. I also make sure to deliver everything for the president, like giving Steven the letter and dropping off the goods in Slateport. And even though I've fought Magma Grunts before now, it's only once I was actually face to face with a Numel that I found myself saying, oh good, I sure am glad I picked the version where I'm gonna fight a lot of these instead of the guys that carry the fish that are actually weak against bugs. Smart move, me. After a pretty tense battle with Drendon, where we almost lose Kit to some not-so-trivial pursuits, I make it to Mauville and finally get myself a full party thanks to the additions of Almondjoy the Volbeat and Spanow the Illumise, because only one of them has nuts. And look, I get everybody to the level cap, but the truth is that I'm absolutely terrified to fight Wattson with my team. The only Pokemon who can even do neutral damage against his steel types is Clark, and I'm obviously not going to be sending him out in this gym. This is a fight where I just might lose somebody. Statistically, probably Almondjoy or Mounds, let's be honest here. So against his Magnemite, I actually start off with Reese's to try and lower its accuracy a bit. I then swap to Cat to paralyze it, as I know it's going to try to do to me. Then I let Almondjoy double team a whole bunch to boost evasiveness, and slowly take down Magnemite through a combination of self-inflicted confusion damage and quick attacks. Wattson even uses one of his super potions, which could be a big help later. When he sends out the Voltorb, I decide to let Almondjoy stay in. My reasoning is that since he's already got the maxed out evasiveness, if this thing decides to self-destruct, maybe I'll at least dodge it? He doesn't blow up, but as I wear it down with quick attack damage, Wattson uses his second super potion. So far, no deaths, and now I don't have to worry about him healing Magneton, so that could be good. And it's here that I take a huge risk. I bring Cat out to paralyze Magneton with Stun Spore, only to immediately die in one hit to a shockwave, leading to our first death of the run. While I will miss Cat immensely, I can say with certainty that Magneton being paralyzed is what helped me do enough damage to eventually whittle it down and defeat the terrifying Ton once and for all. I beat Wattson, but what a hollow victory. And speaking of hollow, before anybody in the comments says it, I know I could have evolved Reese's and gotten a Shedinja that Magneton literally wouldn't have been able to touch, but I have my reasons for not evolving him yet. Also, I'd just like to say how much less stressful Roxanne and Wattson both would have been if Nincada learned Mud Slap, a move that isn't even that good, before level 30 freaking 1. Alright, now here's where I may wind up losing some of you, or where you think I'm cheating too much in this run, but I actually make a new addition to my team in Fiery Path in the form of Slugma. See, I said this was a bugs-only run, but I never specifically said bug-type Pokémon. What's that? You say slugs and snails aren't bugs, but mollusks? Well then why are snails counted as bugs in Animal Crossing? Checkmate. Shut up, Blathers. Look, it's a Slugma. It probably won't even live long enough to evolve. Just let me have this, and I can have it use Rock Smash instead of digging Three Musketeer out of the box again. But in the interest of fairness, since Slugs is not bugs, I won't name it after chocolate, and instead call her Bit-O-Honey, which is hilariously the only candy featured today to have a bug mascot. As I make my way north, a random trainer's Wingull almost makes Kit join his girlfriend or sister or whatever I said earlier in the Great Beyond. I know I've got some scary fights coming up, so I go ahead and do some training. Now, you may have noticed that Clark is still a Surskit, despite being past his evolutionary level. Much like with Reese's, I have my reasons for this, and I'm just kind of hoping that it'll pay off. At level 25, Clark gets Bubble Beam, which is way better than his starting bubble, and it makes all the Team Magma Numels slightly less terrifying. Thanks to Almond Joy, Kit, and Clark's beams of the Signal, Psy, and Bubble persuasions, I'm able to take down Maxie's Mightyena, Golbat, and Camerupt respectively, and that brings us to Flannery's gym, which... holy crap. Look, I went into this gym expecting to lose friends. That Torkoal is an absolute tank on a normal run. But let me try and explain what all happened and how this fight left me completely dumbfounded. Emphasis on me being dumb. I get Clark close to the level cap, but his Bubble Beam isn't enough to take out her first Slugma with one hit. However, it just uses Smog, which does little damage and thankfully doesn't poison. After Flannery wastes a potion and I knock it out, Clark levels up, which may or may not have been the boost he needed to knock out her second Slugma with a single Bubble Beam. But then comes the Torkoal. I swap out to Kit and use Protect to waste her first Overheat. Then I swap to Bit-O-Honey to barely survive the second one, which lowers Torkoal's special attack. Then I swap back to Kit and take a Body Slam, which thankfully can't paralyze due to Shield Dust. I then Protect to waste the third Overheat and go for a Poison Sting, which I know won't do a lot of damage, but I'm hoping that I can poison this thing, even if it means losing Kit to an Overheat. Not only do I poison it, but it doesn't even use Overheat and goes for Body Slam instead. So I Protect again to bait out its last Overheat before swapping to Almond Joy, who ends up taking Torkoal's actual last Overheat, because even though it just happened, I forgot that Torkoal went for Body Slam instead. I am not a smart man. Fortunately, it doesn't kill Almond Joy, but I do immediately nope out of there and bring in Mounds in case it decides to go for a Tract. It does not. It goes for a critical hit Body Slam that luckily also just barely doesn't kill. By this point, the poison has done enough chip damage that I think it's safe to swap back to Clark and hope that it can survive a single hit and take this thing out with Bubble Beam, which thankfully is exactly what happens, somehow allowing me to beat Flannery without a single death in my team of bugs. Even looking back at the footage and writing the script, I can barely believe it. Like, I made a lot of mistakes, I took a lot of gambles, and somehow managed to pull through. If that last Body Slam had paralyzed Clark, I wouldn't have gotten off that Bubble Beam. The poison would have brought Torkoal into healing range, and it likely would have wiped my entire team and ended the run right then and there. This is also when I realized that the entire reason why I didn't evolve Clark before this gym was so that he'd keep his water typing and take neutral fire damage. But then he didn't take a single fire attack in that fight, and if I had evolved him, the increased stats probably would have been enough to take out that first Slugma in one hit. Like I said, I am not a smart man, but I do let Clark celebrate his win by evolving into Masquerain. After beating yet another of Hoenn's most horrifying gyms for bugs, I make a couple of new additions to my team. I head to the desert and pick up a Trapinch because yes, antlions are bugs, deal with it, who I named Take 5 because it's undoubtedly the best and most awesome candy bar ever made, and it's important to recognize perfection. I also grab the Claw Fossil and go revive the extinct Anorith PB Max. Ask your parents. While a bug rock type sounds pretty helpful on paper, Anorith's Gen 3 moveset means the PB here actually stands for pathetically bad. Next up is Norman, and unlike Roxanne or Flannery, he doesn't really have anything particularly good against my team, but I'm still nervous because I know his tough Pokemon could squash my team like something fragile that famously squashes very easily. I'm drawing a blank and it's bugging me. And look, after the stressful ordeal that was Flannery, I'm sorry, but I just took the easy way out here. Thanks to a TM in Fiery Path, I teach Kit Toxic, and use that and Protect to defeat both of his Slaking without them even being able to touch me. I do struggle a bit with Vigoroth, who almost kills both Clark and Almondjoy, but it's actually PB Max who comes through here and defeats the dangerous beast with a well-timed critical hit Metal Claw. Nice work, PB Max. I guess today the PB stands for Protects Bugs. Norman is super disappointed in me for using a cheap strategy like a Toxic Stall and asks where I even learned something like that. You, alright? I learned it by watching you! After beating Norman and getting Surf, I can have Three Musketeer ferry me across the water to get a good rod and catch our final not-a-bug-type bug, Corphish. Yes, really. I name her Crunch, an incredibly useful Dark-type move that she annoyingly doesn't learn in this game, and quickly evolve her into a Crawdont, which means we won't need to subject ourselves to Three Musketeer ever again. I run into Steven, who asks if I use a specific type of Pokemon, and yes, bugs. And also a slug, I guess. I don't really run into any issues defeating Team Magma at the Weather Institute, or beating Drendon again, which is good because now it's time for the absolute monster of a gym battle that is Winona. Her Altaria has often been called the Nuzlocke killer, and I've just got a team of defenseless little bugs to carry me through it. And this fight actually ends up being one of the easiest Winona experiences I've ever had. Like, seriously, I wish I had a better story to tell here. I teach PB Max Rock Tomb to go up against Swellow, who starts with a double team, and even with only 80% accuracy, now lower from that increased evasiveness, I managed to hit 3 Rock Tombs in a row, wasting one of Winona's potions in the process. I guess that PB stands for Probabilities Broken. She then sends in Pelipper, so I swap to Almondjoy. Because I thought this thing always opens with Protect, I go for a Tail Glow, but it uses Supersonic, which fortunately misses. So I Quad Super Blast this thing out of the air with Thunderbolt. Now it's time for the dreaded Altaria, but I've got Clark with the Intimidate. It uses Dragon Dance to restore the dropped attack, and the speed boost is pointless because it's already faster than me. Despite also being Quad Super, Ice Beam doesn't take it out in one shot, but she uses another potion, so I bring it back into the kill range. Basically, Clark just needs to survive a single aerial ace. Which he does, and I take down one of the toughest foes in all of Gen 3 with relative ease. Told ya hunting down a Clark is worth the effort. Then it's just Skarmory, who burns itself on Bit-O-Honey's Flame Body, so the Ember and Burn damage brings it down to about half HP. Anticipating that a second aerial ace won't kill me thanks to the dropped attack from the burn, my little slug takes another hit, launches another Ember, and the burn damage finishes it off. Another terrifying gym that I somehow managed to get through without a single death. And I owe it all to spending way too much time in the Mauville game corner. Thanks, underage gambling, you make everything better. Now that I've beaten Winona, a lot of awesome stuff can happen, so let me just go over all of it real fast. The level cap before the next gym means that I can evolve Bit-O-Honey into a Magcargo. And you monsters thought she was gonna die before she could evolve. Shame on you. I also evolve Take 5 into Vibrava, where it becomes a Dragon type and my designated flyer for the run. And remember how I'd been holding off on evolving Reese's this entire time? Well, my plan has finally come to fruition, because at level 38, Nincada learns Metal Claw, a move that he doesn't learn as a Ninjask. Although, if I'd let him evolve earlier, he'd have gotten moves like Slash, Fury Cutter, and Swords Dance, all of which arguably would have been far more useful. In fact, Metal Claw is really only good against Ice or Rock types, both of which deal super effective damage to Ninjask anyway, so... Wow, what a dumb strategy. Why did I do any of this? I'm not even really planning on keeping Reese's in my main party at this point. But hey, it wasn't a complete waste because we also got a Shedinja out of it. I decided to keep with the Reese's theme and name it after one of the way too many Reese's candy bars, which, yes, I am aware actually does include Take 5 now, but that wasn't always the case. I decided to go with Fast Break because nothing breaks faster than a Pokemon with only 1 HP. Oh yeah, and PB Max evolves into Armaldo, so I'll say the PB stands for predominantly bigger. And it's not all just evolutions, I can also head to the Safari Zone to catch our last 2 bug Pokemon, Pinsir and Heracross, whom I name Milky Way and Snickers, because while they seem very similar, come on, one is clearly better than the other. And here's the thing, despite me going through a lot of work to catch these 2 just so I could say I caught all the available bugs, I'm not going to use them. At all. Why? Because I am an incredibly anal human being, and Gen 3 was the start of one of the banes of my existence in the world of Pokemon. And it's all because of this right here. Starting in Gen 3, the games actually keep track of what ball you caught your Pokemon in. It shows up in their summary, you can see it when you send them out into battle, and different balls even have different particle effects. Heck, later gens even show off the different balls when you use Pokemon Centers. And it makes my bones itch to have any Pokemon in my party in anything besides a classic Pokeball. And yes, this does mean I've frequently made catching certain Pokemon so much harder on myself just to maintain this. Every new gen, I hope they'll allow us to just change what ball a Pokemon is in after you catch it, but no such luck. I'm sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. So I make my way to Lily Cove, and like seriously, I can't imagine it'd be that hard. Obviously you just lose the old ball, like you can't use the mechanic to farm infinite Master Balls, but maybe people want their starter in a Luxury Ball, or every single Pokemon they ever catch ever in a bog standard classic red and white Pokeball. There's nothing wrong with that, I'm not crazy, you're crazy, Drendon! A rival who doesn't even fully evolve their starter? Now that's crazy. How did I get here? When I finally take on Tate and Liza, I make one of the worst mistakes you can make on a death run like this, and that's letting myself get overconfident. I send out PB Max and Crunch hoping to take down the Solrock as quickly as possible, which thankfully we do through a combination of Metal Claw and Crab Hammer. PB Max even takes a Psychic for minimal damage, so I'm not all that worried about it. But once Solrock is dead, I let my guard down. I know the only damaging move Lunatone has can't hurt Crunch, but I ignore the Calm Minds it's been setting up, and once it does decide to use Psychic again, that's it. PB Max is dead. I can't even say it was a necessary sacrifice or a calculated risk on my part, it was just negligence, plain and simple, which frankly makes it hurt all the more. And in an act of revenge for his fallen friend, Almondjoy demolishes the floating moon with a critical hit Signal Beam. Farewell, PB Max. You helped us out against Norman, you pulled off the seemingly impossible against Winona, and you were instrumental in taking out Solrock as quickly as we did. Today, PB stands for Personally Blessed, as we all were for having known you. So then I hunt down Team Magma, and whoops, I need strength. So I go back to Lily Cove and pull out PB Max's still warm corpse from the box. So today the PB stands for Positively Blasphemous. Unfortunately, the Pokemon I swapped him out for was Bit of Honey, and whoops, I need Rock Smash. So I go back to Lily Cove, and yeah, this is all just me highlighting how not smart I am. Blah blah Maxie, blah blah hunt down Groudon. Despite it not being a bug and risking some itchy bones, I just hurl my Master Ball at it so we can take on the final gym. And before I fight Wallace, I want to make one thing clear. As I've said before, I'm not a professional Nuzlocke or anything. I just want to play Pokemon and have fun and tell hopefully entertaining stories about my journey. And sometimes that means just doing what I think is funny. And you know what I think is funny? That not a single one of Wallace's Pokemon has any moves that can hurt Shedinja. I have Almond Joy take out the Love Disc just so we get the confusion risk out of the way, and then Fast Break, in its first and last battle ever, single-handedly wipes out the rest of Wallace's entire team. And I think that's hilarious. Celio can't set up hail damage, Seaking doesn't have Peck, there's literally nothing they can do to me. Wallace and his final gym leader Pokemon just have to helplessly sit there while this unflinching, unfeeling shell with 1 HP demolishes them without any issue. Now I can head to Victory Road, and with the Elite Four cap, Take 5 can finally evolve into a Flygon before I take on Wally. Clark repeats his success against Altaria thanks to Ice Beam, which freezes so I don't even have to take a hit before I bring it down, and Flygon absolutely demolishes Magneton thanks to Earthquake. That was for Cat, you son of a— And Almond Joy's Signal Beam brings down his Ace Gardevoir without any big issues. And now all that stands in my way is the Elite Four. So I put together my final team of Bit-O-Honey, Clark, Take 5, Almond Joy, Crunch, and I decide to have Kit fill in the last spot. He admittedly hasn't done much since Norman, but I figure his specific skills could be useful, and what can I say? I'm a great big softie, and he was more or less my unofficial starter way back when we started this whole adventure. Before we fight the Elite Four, I just want to say I get it. You're probably sitting here like, Magcargo? Groudon? Flygon? I thought this was a bug challenge. And it is, but there are 2 reasons why I'm electing to use these Pokemon if you'll bear with me for a moment. For starters, it was just so I could reliably use Water and Flying HMs without needing to catch any new Pokemon for the sole purpose of doing that. I think that in itself is fair. I don't like needing HM slaves even in a challenge run. Secondly, and this may not seem like it has anything to do with it, but I love regional variants. I think I've said before, this is my favorite gimmick Pokemon has ever introduced. I love seeing not just these alternate versions, but learning the lore behind how they changed and adapted to these different environments. It really bums me out that Legends Z-A didn't introduce any new ones. But as I've looked through the list of regional variants, there was something that I found interesting. As of the time of making this video, the only Pokemon types that have never gotten a regional variant are Bug and Steel, meaning no Pokemon of these types has gotten a new form. And the only types that no Pokemon have turned into are Bug and Flying. Of course, we've seen regional variants gain the Steel typing, and we've seen Flying types change into something else, but Bug is the only type left completely alone in both categories. And I think because, well, sure, it'd be pretty easy for a Bug to change its secondary typing, like we could have potentially gotten with a Hisuian Scyther that turns into Kleavor, it's arguably a bit harder to explain why or how a non-Bug becomes a Bug type. And that's actually kind of what inspired this entire run, if I'm being honest. Just thinking about what Pokemon are technically bugs, despite not being the bug type. For those of you that want a quick, overly simplified biology lesson, the term bug usually refers to creatures with exoskeletons and segmented legs. This is why arachnids, which have 8 legs, and insects, which have 6, both fall under the classification of bug. I've seen some scientific arguments that bugs only refer to land-based arthropods, and that's why Pokemon like Kingler, Barbaracle, Clawitzer, Cloth, and yes, Crawdont shouldn't count as bugs. But I've also seen a cake that says shrimps is bugs, so I think it's okay to have educated disagreements on the subject. Like, despite these species of land crabs they're both based on being related, Dwebble got to be a bug type while Crabrawler didn't, meaning they could make a bug-type regional Crabrawler one day, and it would make perfect sense, and I find that fascinating. Anyway, that's why I'm completely unashamed to have 50% of my Bugs-only challenge party not be bug-type Pokemon, so let's just move on. The first battle is Sydney, who starts with his Mightyena. After he and Clark share some mutual intimidation, Clark gets a critical hit Silver Wind that knocks out the Pooch with 1 hit. After that, yeah, Almond Joy sweeps his entire team with Signal Beam. I honestly didn't think it would kill Absol in 1 hit, but here we are. Next up is Phoebe, and I start things out with Take 5, who uses a Crunch before her first Dusclops takes care of things for me. I know her second Dusclops has Ice Beam, so I switch to Crunch, which, again, would be a very useful move for her to have in this game. I kinda hate that Knockoff is the strongest Dark move she can learn, but it does knock off her Berry and allow me to take the kill with a Surf. I decide to send Kit out against her Sableye, and did not know that it could do that, but through a combination of badly poisoning it and Crunch, we take it down. Then I just have Take 5 take down her 2 Banette with Crunch. The move Crunch, not Crunch my Pokemon. This got more confusing than I thought it would. Third is Glacia, and I have Almond Joy start off with Tail Glow while her Glalie sets up the Hail. Then I go for a Brick Break while it sets up a Light Screen, which a second Brick Break destroys and knocks out the Snowball. Thanks to the Tail Glow, Almond Joy's Thunderbolt one-shots both of her Celio. On her second Glalie, I decide to go for another Tail Glow because I know Walrein is a beefy beast, and I take some pretty harsh Ice Beam damage before I get the win with a few more Brick Breaks. While Almond Joy has taken enough damage to get him into the red, the +4 special attack boost is more than enough to knock out Walrein with a single hit, nabbing us our 3rd win. As a reminder, that's 2 of the Hoenn Elite Four that were basically swept almost entirely by a Volbeat. I decide to have Take 5 fight Drake Shelgon, and I'm pleasantly surprised that a single Dragon Breath is enough to handle the job. Then, Clark is 3 for 3 on taking down Altaria, with Drake's even going down to a single quad-effective Ice Beam. The first of his 2 Flygon just sets up a Sandstorm before going down to an Ice Beam, but the second one hits Clark pretty hard with a Flamethrower before Ice Beam claims its 4th victim. That just leaves Salamence, and I don't know if I thought Clark would be faster, or if it didn't have Flamethrower, or if whatever it used wouldn't get the kill. I don't know what I was thinking, but a Flamethrower takes Clark down for good. Rest in peace, buddy. I meant what I said at the very beginning. You were always worth it. I then send out Take 5, and while he takes a little bit of damage, he does pick up the slack and finish off Drake's ace, and with that, we've successfully beaten the Elite Four. Now all that's left is the champion, Steven. Bit-O-Honey actually manages to do something and beat Skarmory with Flamethrower, but not before it throws down some spikes, and then Crunch takes out Steven's own PB Max, where the PB stands for my previous blunder. He then sends out his Aggron, which I always forget doesn't actually have any Steel or Rock-type moves. Almond Joy takes a Thunder like a champ and knocks it out with 2 Brick Breaks. Steven's Claydol takes a while to kill because it sets up both Reflect and Light Screen, preventing Crunch from getting the clean 2-hit kill from Knockoff and Surf. He then sends in his Cradily, and I'm just gonna confess, I suck at remembering what this thing is weak against. I know the Rock neutralizes Grass's weakness to fire, and the Grass neutralizes Rock's weakness to water, so I send in Kit to badly poison it with a Toxic, but he takes major damage from an Ancient Power. Knowing that Almond Joy would also be in danger if I swap him in, I make the painful decision to have Kit stay in and go for a Silver Wind, which barely does anything because the stupid Reflect is still up. And then our unofficial starter is taken out. Rest well, Kit. You finally get to go home to Kat. She missed you. As Almond Joy comes back in, the Reflect wears off and Almond Joy's Signal Beam just barely doesn't get the kill. Fortunately, Cradely's Ancient Power also just barely doesn't get the kill, and then, in one last act of defiance, Kit's Toxic Damage finishes it off for us once and for all. Only one Pokemon stands between my bugs and I from becoming champions. And okay, so my plan was to have Crunch use Knockoff to get rid of Metagross's Citrus Berry, but he outspeeds and gets off a Hyper Beam, which immediately kills the already wounded Crawfish. Yeah, that's on me, I'm not sure what I was expecting there. Take 5's Earthquake brings it down to a bit under half HP on the recharge, immediately activating its berry, so a second Earthquake is enough to get the kill. Looking at it now, I mean, Take 5 was at full HP, he likely could have tanked a Hyper Beam no problem. Crunch really died at the last minute for no reason, didn't he? But with that, Take 5, Almond Joy, and somehow Bit-O-Honey are the sole survivors of the party and become Pokémon League champions. And that's my Pokémon Ruby bug run. There were definitely some tense moments and some surprisingly great fights. I feel like I really dropped the ball toward the end there, and I am sorry that we lost the people that we did, but I still had a really good time. I hope you all did too, and I thank you for joining me and mourning the friends we lost along the way. You got to learn more about my weird fascinations with regional Pokemon and my bizarre hatred of all other Pokeball models. I'd love to do more Pokemon runs like this in the future, so maybe I'll tackle Shining Pearl next time. Do you have any ideas for a challenge I could do? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again for joining me, happy Halloween, and if you don't want to eat your chocolate, pass it over here. Not Three Musketeers though, you can keep that.